David Berg, Stephanie Berg, Ruby Wilson.
Good evening, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Now, I'm really reluctantly involved in this. It's kind of been foisted upon me by fate. But I'm not in principle an opponent of natural gas drilling or any of its production. However, after talking to my fellow landowners, my residents in my county, I'm in Susquehanna County, Pennsylvania, I realized that most of them simply don't realize the significance of this project. Most of the residents in Susquehanna County are so awash in pipeline, drilling, and all the other associated activities, such as the trucks on the road, that they're desensitized. People have begun to feel that generally they can't do anything about it. They feel hopeless, and they feel that there's nothing they can do. We have hundreds, if not thousands, of lakes, ponds, streams, wetlands, habitats that will be severely impacted by the project. Many of these areas have threatened, endangered, and species of concern on them. It's inconceivable to me that clearing a 100-foot wide or more path 120 miles long will not significantly impact water quality and the health of these species. Soil erosion, the elimination of cooling shade trees, fragmentation of habitat, they'll all be factors. Much of the forested buffers that protect these wetlands, the water sources, they'll be destroyed. And planting grass in its place does not provide equal protection to that of a forest canopy. As far as land use and recreation, the proposed pipeline will forever alter land use in our area. We have no wish to see a long line of grassed land cutting through our forests, which have finally come back after generations of senseless logging and overharvesting. Recreation, such as hiking, fishing, hunting, they'll all be adversely impacted. Many of us use our land for a solace and a quiet of the woods. That feeling of solace will be irrevocably changed by this adverse visual impact created by a long scar of a pipeline through our lands. According to the Williams Company, we retain the use of our land once the pipeline is constructed. However, they state that we cannot build on the right-of-way or plant trees on it. For many of us, including myself, those are the two only reasons that we purchased the property in the first place. Property values will certainly be affected. The natural beauty is one of the most important inherent factors of the land for us, as is the right to use our land in any manner we please and not have the restriction of no trees and no buildings put on us. I intend to keep my land in forest at such time in the future that it becomes feasible to build upon it. If the Williams Company and Cabot Oil want the property, the only just compensation is to purchase it outright for the total value of the land and future mineral rights below. As far as safety, there's many concerns. I'll just hit on a little bit. I'm sure that in general, pipelines have a good record of safety, but there's always an inherent risk with transmission of natural gas in the form of potential gas leaks, explosions. Increased risks are also inherent in the increased traffic and construction in the area. Susquehanna County is the hotbed of natural gas drilling, gathering line construction, and other activity. The landscape is becoming dotted with well pads, gathering pipeline paths. Many of us have already become alarmed at how even the gathering pipeline right-of-ways are a visual intrusion on the landscape. The addition of the proposed Constitution pipeline will create major cumulative impacts. The current drilling and pipeline projects are already adding to the adverse impacts to our land, water, air, and visual environment. not to mention the increased noise we deal with every day in the form of truck traffic, construction noise. The safety of our roads has also come into question. These aren't short-term impacts. They've already been going on for at least 2 years, maybe 3 now, I'm not sure. I've lost count. I mean, I'm numb myself. The Constitution pipeline would add additional adverse impacts, resulting in major cumulative impacts. I understand that the Williams Company and Cabot are planning on beginning at-risk negotiations with landowners for right-of-way prior to FERC approval. I heard this on the radio, actually, in an interview with Doug Clark, the attorney. I don't believe that the Williams Company and Cabot should be engaging in such practices, because having leasing agreements prior to approval will give them potential leverage in future legal arguments. The entire process is weighted towards approval. Only by strenuous objection can the public at large have any impact, and most of that public in Susquehanna County has grown too tired of all the activity and too numb to fight. And by the time they realize what is going on, it will be too late. I believe that more time for the public to be educated is needed in Susquehanna County, and I request an extension of the scoping period for my community. Thank you.
My name is Stephanie Dixon Berg, S-T-E-F-A-N-I-E. I'd like to say, first of all, shame on some of you New Yorkers for not thinking that we Pennsylvanians care. I, too, have driven up from Jackson Township, Susquehanna County, Pennsylvania. This is my second FERC meeting. I'm originally from the city of Oneonta. My roots in this area are deep. The proposed Constitution pipeline is coming through my property, slicing it in half at between mile markers 11 and 12. It's going to affect wetlands on my property and at least one endangered species. My land is 100% forested. It includes some streams. My family bought this land with a plan to have it for our recreation, for just having peace, and for just having a piece of God's green earth. And this property is ours and our children's. The proposed pipeline is going to be cutting into our forest up to 200 feet of easement property, turning it into grassland, which we can do nothing with. It will affect our ability to enjoy it. It will affect the wildlife on it. And I'm opposed to this property, this pipeline on my property. It is taking no regard for the fact that it's cutting through the middle. It's taking no regard that I actually have property lines it could consider if at the best case scenario. I'm strongly opposed to it. You need to consider the views and the thoughts of all of us landowners. Thank you.
Ruby Wilson. James Baldo. Christine Roche. Ruby Wilson. Move on to James Baldo.
My name is James Baldo, B-A-L-D-O. I am a property owner at mile marker 72, and thank God I have a neighbor who told me that we should be here. A few weeks ago, some young man, nice young man, approached me and asked me if I would sign, and I don't know what I signed. I don't know if I signed away my rights or what, but if I would allow them to come on our property and to survey the property. And I really didn't know much about what was going on because I wasn't paying attention, which is a shame on me. And after a conversation with the young man, basically it was explained to me by him that eminent domain would allow him to come on the property anyway. So I said, well, why create a hassle? I signed and let him come on the property. And when we were having that discussion, he indicated that the route, actually he showed it to me, that the route that the pipeline was going to be on was on the ridge at the top of the mountain. This would be basically over by Franklin Mountain. And at the top of the mountain, it didn't seem to affect a whole heck of a lot except the ridge. And then when the neighbors came and said, you ought to come here tonight, my wife and I decided to come, and we were here, and we're looking at this map out front, and the pipeline changed. It's not on the ridge that the individual showed me. It's literally right straight through our property, as a couple other people here have indicated. And if you cut my property in half, I have two worthless pieces of property. It doesn't seem right that I was misled and misinformed by a representative of the pipeline people. So prior to coming here, like I said, I had no opinion because I really wasn't paying much attention to it, but I certainly have an opinion now, and the opinion now is I don't want a pipeline through my property that's destroying my property value. I lived in Pennsylvania. I lived in Bradford, Pennsylvania. We had, in Bradford, Pennsylvania, they had the only donkey, they're called, the wells, the oil wells, at a McDonald's. You'd pull into the McDonald's drive-thru and you'd go by, yeah, it is funny, you'd go by the donkey. And when you walked out of your house in the morning, because it was near Oil City, that should tell you a lot, and there was a refinery in town, but when you'd walk out of your house, you would have this beautiful aroma of refining oil in the air. And at the end of the day, you'd go home and you'd blow your nose and your napkin was filthy black. And then you would turn on the water fountain or the water spigot in your kitchen, and you would hope to God that you didn't have to drink what came out of it. So if that's what's happening in Pennsylvania because of oil refineries and oil pipelines, I got to assume, and I'm going to make the assumption, we all know what happens when you assume, that I'm going to stand on it this time. I got to assume that what we're doing here isn't healthy, it isn't good for the environment, certainly isn't good for my property, and I have a water source that bubbles up, and it's a spring, and when my wife and family and I travel, the first thing we do when we come home is run to our water source because it's outstanding water. So we're opposed to it. It's a shame that we were misled, and I'm not going to use the word lied to. Oh, I guess I just did. It's a shame we were misled, and we were led to believe that it was something than what it is. So we are opposed. I'm on the record. Thank you so much for being here.
Christine Roche.
My name is Christine Roche, R-O-C-H-E. My husband and I own 127 acres on White Hill Road in Davenport. Both proposed routes cross our property. I had prepared a lot to say tonight, but I won't get through it all with the time I've been allotted, so I will be submitting my feelings in full in writing. To sum everything up, I'd like to state that I fully oppose the pipeline. I grew up on a dairy farm in Delaware County and learned to love and respect nature. I've spent the last 12 years living in Broome County and 12 years working towards returning to live in Delaware County. The property we have owned for the last 6 years is the love of our life. We enjoy everything about it, from the bald eagles to the turtles in our pond and everything in between. We have invested many dollars in this property. We've invested our hearts. We've spent hundreds of hours clearing a field for the pigs and chickens and goats we plan to raise. We've spent thousands of dollars on a barn. We've spent hundreds of hours clearing the site for our home. We had plans to break ground on June 1st of this year. Concerned about energy, we were building a passive solar home with a windmill to provide electricity. Those plans were placed on hold in early May when we learned that this pipeline was slated to go through the heart of our home site. Let me say that although many of my comments relate to compensation, no amount of compensation would convince me to willingly give our property to this project. No amount of compensation would be enough to outweigh the harm and risk that this project will bring to the area and our environment. I'm infuriated about hundreds of things. Infuriated that a company that stands to make millions of dollars can take the property from hardworking citizens against their will. infuriated that a government would allow this to happen, infuriated that people's dreams and properties are sacrificed, and sacrificed without fair compensation, infuriated that we'd have to pay taxes on the property that we won't have free use of, infuriated that counties and towns receive tax revenues based on our loss. This company isn't taking their property, they're taking ours, but it's a good way of buying them off. I'm infuriated that some governments and citizens are influenced by the dollars dangled in their face and are willing to sacrifice everything else. Infuriated that people who willingly allow the drilling of gas on their property are paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, but that people whose property is taken from them against their will are not paid fairly for the transportation of that gas. Infuriated that eminent domain is permitted for transmission lines, thereby eliminating the power of the landowner to keep it off their property, or to negotiate payment in the same manner allowed for gathering lines. This effectively allows the gas companies to steal the land from the people who have worked so hard for it. I'm infuriated that Oneonta wants this gas so badly, yet alternative AM travels miles up the mountain to go around it. Infuriated that we are put in this position to sell our property because I refuse to build a house next to this pipeline. I refuse to deal with the risks and not have free use of the land that we bought. I'm infuriated that our well-being is put at risk by this company and its unsafe practices, that the environment is put at risk by this company. Infuriated that the natural gas industry is allowed to continue doing what they do despite their unsafe track record. Infuriated over the lax oversight and under-regulation of this industry. I'm infuriated that the industry is allowed to set the standards. It's not the government setting the standards based on science and independent research. I'm infuriated that Williams and Cabot proposes to go straight through the middle of properties as opposed to following property lines. Infuriated that there are no minimal setbacks regulations in regard to the pipeline. Infuriated that 125 feet of trees will be cut down, taking our privacy and tranquility in the sanctuary of wildlife. Infuriated that it will be difficult to keep four-wheelers and snowmobiles off it. I'm infuriated that Williams and Cabot have not been upfront about the number of compressor stations that will be built to support the transportation of the natural gas in this line. I'm infuriated that population determines the class of a pipeline, and therefore the requirements and regulations surrounding the pipeline. My opinion is that my life and the life of my husband is as important as the life of anyone living in a more populated area. I'm infuriated that Williams and Cabot touts the jobs that the project will bring to the area, while history in Pennsylvania shows that few local citizens will actually be employed in the project. I'm infuriated that the history in Pennsylvania shows that the economic impact of the project is only temporary, yet the promise of economic impact is so greatly influences people's decisions. I'm infuriated over the belief that this is just the beginning of the industrialization of our beautiful countryside. Infuriated that solar and wind power aren't more supported by government. Infuriated that natural gas industry is allowed to shove millions of dollars into lobbying politicians to assure their goals are met. Infuriated that politicians accept those dollars. I'm infuriated hearing that this will lead to fracking in our area. In that regard, I have concerns over the irreparable poisoning of the Earth's water, the use of millions of gallons of water per day at a time when we are experiencing droughts never seen before. I'm concerned for the pollution of our air, the damage to the health of all living creatures. I'm infuriated that my life has been put on hold because of this project. I'm infuriated that I'm now throwing thousands of dollars more out the window for rent instead of putting it towards a mortgage as I thought I would be doing. I don't suppose Williams and Cabot will be reimbursing me for that. I'm also concerned about everything that everyone's talked about tonight in our previous scoping sessions. I'm concerned over the safety record of this company, concerned about what risks this opens us up to in the future in terms of the right-of-way, coexisting lines, future compressor stations, other type of stations, air, ground, and water pollution, safe and sufficient drinking water for our home, barn, pond, and the world in general, health risks, our ability to obtain and maintain affordable insurance, emergency preparedness, what we will be left with if the pipeline company abandons the pipeline, and our ability to get restitution after something does go wrong. Experience in Pennsylvania shows little to no support from government agencies, and that it's an uphill battle won rarely by the property owner.
Less than a minute, Ms. Roche, please.
I'm concerned for the integrity of our dam and for the wetlands on our property, the steep terrain the routes travel, and the destruction of local roads. I'm concerned that the real purpose of this pipeline is to lay the structure for future drilling in the region and to export natural gas after having taken our property by eminent domain. In the end, our story isn't any different than any other landowner whose property is being taken from them against their will. The details might be different, but the result is the same. It's the same story of concern for safety, loss of freedom, loss of serenity, loss of dreams, and loss of what a person loves so dearly. I ask FERC to consider all of these statements. Thank you.
Bill Roach. Bill Roach. Rudy Whitbeck. Janelle Whitbeck. Bill Roach.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing us to speak our mind here, agree or disagree. We hope that you, in the future, very near future, allow the residents of Delaware County to do the same. My name is Dr. William Roche, R-O-C-H-E. I am a landowner of 127 acres. I last spoke about the science as I understood it, come to learn it. It's not my area of expertise, so it took some time to try and understand bits and parts of what natural gas was going to mean to so many different areas. The last time I spoke to you about science. It was a little bit easier for me because it's pretty much what I do for a living, and the basis of what I do is built in science. I spoke to you about the direct impact zone, about the blow and the burn lines and the burn radius and how it will affect initially where Oneonta and Otsego County thought maybe it would not affect them. It had not taken M. There's, as I said in my last meeting to you, there's a 911 line that goes right through that mountain, and in the natural gas line is built under it and over it. And so the impact of blowing that line in milliseconds will certainly affect both the residents of Otsego and Delaware County. What I would like to speak for a few seconds tonight on is something much more difficult for me. I need to separate the science and my heart. And tonight I would like to speak about my heart. I was born in Hell's Kitchen, New York, 45th Street and 10th Avenue. I was left to an orphanage with my identical twin brother. We looked forward to a thing called the Fresh Air Fund. Take us out of the city, bring us up to a place like Delaware County, Otsego County. That was done once a year. That's when we got out of the city. Then one day, these two angels walked into the orphanage, and they brought us to a place called Hartwick, New York. And we really understood then what country living was all about and what fresh air was all about. And my foster dad would say to my brother and I, you know, boys, keep your nose to the grindstone. If you keep your nose to the grindstone, America, you'll grow well. And we did. I graduated from one of the most prestigious Ivy League schools in the United States. I work at a medical center with children that I love each and every day. I work at 3 universities and their graduate medical divisions in teaching. I kept my nose to the grindstone. I saved. I met my wife and I bought 127 acres with her in Davenport. One day we said we'd close the gates and we'd never look back. We spent the dollars to put what we thought would be the right thing, to be green, to show the children around us, the future around us, the ones where we said, the Fresh Air Fund. Let's bring kids, let's see, let's keep it clean. And so we did a passive solar architect home. We cleared a pad so that we could have wind energy and be off the grid. So the shovel was supposed to go in the ground on June 1st, as my wife said, and we got the letter in the mail on May 15th, I believe it was. And things gone downhill from there. We're now renting a home in Bainbridge, New York, beautiful area. When what we should be doing is enjoying some retirement and some fun and the fresh air and the way in which my foster parents grew us. I appreciated what my foster parents did for me. They brought me to a county that allowed me to grow, provided me opportunities, provided me the opportunity with education that allowed me to keep my nose to the grindstone. And I'm here to give back to this community what it so afforded me. What I'm asking FERC to do is to allow my family the opportunity to grow in Delaware County and Otsego County. Thank you.
Rudy Whitbeck.
My name is Rudy Whitbeck. I live in Delaware County, Township of Sydney. As a Vietnam veteran, I decided to research the United Nations Convention Against Torture and other cruel, inhumane, and degrading treatment and punishment as prepared by the U.S. Department of State with assistance from many other agencies of the federal government. This statement says, every unit of government at every level within the United States is committed by law as well as policy to protect the individual's life, liberty, and physical integrity. Every week we wait to hear from the Constitution Pipeline concerning the alternate M pipeline, which its route indicates it's to be within 5 to 15 or 5 to 500 feet from our house and well, and directly across the 20-foot county road from our house. We have asked a land representative twice in person for a route change. We have emailed as requested, and we have written the Constitution Pipeline to change the M to either the right or the left, as it is open property with no houses to destroy. We wonder every hour what we can do. This constant uncertainty is cruel and unusual punishment for people who have never committed a crime, paid our taxes, and improved the property that is now destined for destruction. If published facts are to be believed, there is little adequate need for natural gas in this area. This pipeline is supposed to benefit. My question is, why and how does the Constitution Pipeline have the right to violate my constitutional rights for the sole purpose of investor profits? This is a book from the Hazardous Materials Safety Administration. The lines being put into service in the various shale plays like the Marcellus and Utica are generally of a much larger diameter and operating at a higher pressure than traditional rural gas lines, increasing the concerns for safety of the environment and people near operations. Data collected about these new pipelines would contribute to a body of knowledge enabling safer and more reliable pipeline operations. This is a 208 copy of Emergency Response Guidebook. It is to be used by trained responders according to requirements of the U.S. Department of Labor, Occupational Safety, and Health Administration, OSHA 29, CFR 1910, .120 and regulations issued by the U.S. EPA. That's EPA 40 CFR Part 311. A 212 edition is for sale at Amazon.com. I believe the information for this copy is for our purpose, the same as each copy. Gas pipelines are listed as one of the first addressed hazards in this book. There are 23 pages of potential hazards of gas line leaks and/or spills encompassing health, fire, evacuation, explosion, and first aid. There is a chart of initial isolation and protective action distances, specifically addressing gas pipelines, leaks, and spills. What exactly are the environmental human health risks associated with construction and operation of this Constitution pipeline? Will landowners be notified and updated and in a timely manner? During construction, will we be kept prisoners in our home due to increased truck and equipment traffic? We ask this as we are caregivers for a handicapped 4-year-old and I earn a living on a 24-hour-a-day supermarket service. Thank you.
Janelle Whitbeck.
Hello, I'm Janelle Whitbeck. That's Julia Alpha November Echo Lima Space Whiskey Hotel Indigo Tango Bravo Echo Charlie and Kilo. I am a concerned full-time resident in Delaware County. I am seriously concerned about the negative impacts of the pipeline on the environmental, population as in human, and economic as well as social integrity of the county and state. A member of the Delaware County Town Council implied in the paper that most of the full-time residents in this county are in favor of the pipeline. If this is true, why are there signs 5-to-1 ratio or greater stating no pipeline? Natural gas is a cleaner fossil fuel. Yes, it is cleaner to burn, but to extract it makes twice as much CO2 than any other fossil fuel. This is just in regards to the heavy equipment needed to extract the natural gas, maintain that equipment. For example, the trucks needed to take away the fracked water. It is said that the pipeline and hydraulic fracturing for natural gas is safe for the water supplies. If this is true, then why are no pipelines and fracking pads planned in the vicinity of the New York City water reservoir? It is said that natural gas will increase economics in the community. If this is true, then why is homeowners insurance being denied to some homes that are on the Alt-M pipeline route? These are 4 of a multitude of contradictions, falsehoods, and fraudulent statements being seen and heard in the media, broadcasted around towns and talked about from neighbor to neighbor. To top it off, when people get into the frack website, they are greeted by a warning in big black letters that willingly and knowingly lie to the government is a crime. I'm paraphrasing their paraphrased statement. The federal law that allows this U.S. Title 18, Section 101001. For the most part, is correct. It is a criminal activity to lie to the federal government, but it is also a federal crime for the government to knowingly lie to the public. Who can the public contact? Who can the public contact when the government falsifies statements to the general public or individual landowners? Is the public supposed to go to the FBI, the Department of State, or is it the Department of Justice, or all of them? Is not provided this information a form of fraudulent or corrupt behavior? What are the laws that pertain to this type of government corruption? Does Title 18 U.S.C. Section 1001 apply? Or is it Title 18 U.S.C. Section 1519? Or is it a CFR, which is Code of Federal Regulation, such as 5 CFR 2635.101? Or is there more? In short, who is ultimately responsible, as well as which laws enforce federal agencies needed to be contacted to uphold the rules, regulations, and laws that govern this country? Thank you. Have a nice day.
Deb Herman, Ann Stack, Giuseppe Feduli,
My name's Dev Kernan. I'm here to speak for the Henry S. Kernan Land Trust and my 4 brothers and sisters, my parents, the generations that follow us, which is now 1, but we hope 2 before long. We have a piece of land in Delaware County that we've had for close to 3/4 of a century. We put it into a trust that will preserve that piece of land for at least another 125 years at a substantial sacrifice personally. We feel that this pipeline, which will cross over a mile of our property, is unwarranted. We generally agree with the emotional and factual statements that people have made here and opinions that they've given, so I'm going to limit myself to only a few additional points that I hope that FERC will study very carefully. In the brochure that FERC distributes, which I think might be this right here, it states that your business is to, the business of the FERC commissioners is to decide whether a project should be approved. That requires a lot of really good information. There's very little really well-founded information circulating now that's available to us. And we think that your function really is to provide that information through the environmental impact statement process, which I understand includes specific and thorough socioeconomic study and considerations. I haven't got good information from Constitution Pipeline myself. I've asked them what happens after the 15 years, for example, that they've said they have a contract to transport gas and they go completely mealy-mouthed. I note that they have contacted us as directly affected property owners, but they never contacted neighbors who might be only 25 or 50 feet away from that path of the pipeline or its study area, and those people are very upset. They need this information too. I'd like to point out as one example of the misleading attitude of the Constitution Pipeline that they proclaim that this pipeline will serve 3 million households. That doesn't mean that there are 3 million households that are going to go dark and have no heat. Because this gas that will be carried in this pipeline, ties into a network. So really, it will provide only a very small marginal benefit to, let's say, 100 million households on the East Coast. We should think about that clearly. Maybe it's only going to benefit those households to the tune of 1, 2, 3% improvement in the amount of money that they pay for gas, maybe not even that. It's not a question of households going dark and having no heat and people shivering through the winter. This ties into, is this pipeline really necessary? I regard this as a case of the classic tyranny of the majority over ourselves, the minority. And we're a minority here, whether we oppose this pipeline or whether we approve of it. Personally, I oppose it, but there are lots of people who approve of it. They're still in a minority here. They're still being dominated by this pipeline and the oil and gas development that will inevitably follow. It's naive to think that it won't follow. We think that the consideration of this pipeline should extend much further into the future than this 15-year contract, which is all we've heard about from Constitution. Local people, ourselves included with our 200-year lifetime trust, are planning for much, much longer periods than that. All the local entities, governments, chambers of commerce, tourist bureaus, and all the rest have to plan for much more than 15 years. So we need to know what will happen over the course of the entire lifetime of this pipeline, which is said to be as much as 100 years. To that end, we should know the specifics of the business plan for the Constitution Pipeline. It should not be kept in the dark from us because it affects us so strongly. We should know what their projections are. They should be subjected to very careful analysis by independent experts on economic matters. I'm not one, but they are there, and they should be people that we can all trust. We can't trust the Constitution Pipeline Company or the people that they employ to do their planning. I'd like to point out that the forests that have regrown on the eastern part of the United States and around this area especially, since 1900, have turned into an enormous, one of the biggest areas of green land on Earth, which currently sequesters 10% of the carbon emissions of the entire United States. We don't feel, as stewards of forest land, that that function of our forests locally should be infringed in any way. And the probability is that if the pipeline goes through and the probable development, industrial development that will follow, all goes through, that function of our forest land, carbon sequestration, will be really seriously damaged. And that is not warranted in our view.
Less than a minute if you could.
All right, thank you. I'd like to also say that in order to clarify the conditions of this pipeline, we should know what the returns to the pipeline company and the investors are. By hearsay, they may pay 1/2% of their budget to property owners for easements. I'm convinced that no investor in Constitution Pipeline would settle for 1/2% forever, but probably 10 or 20 times that much annually at least. We need to know what the ratio of returns to those investors is, and it needs to be carefully compared to what the real returns for local people with their supposed local jobs and local businesses will be. They tell us that there will be local development, but doesn't that mean that there will be just people moving in from everywhere to take advantage of those jobs and those businesses, and that will force a destruction of our local life and our local economy? Tourism will collapse, et cetera, the things that we all know. And is that warranted? And what is the ratio of the money they make to the money that will actually come to local people? It's really important to us that that also be compared to the losses to local landowners. I'm saying the profits of the Constitution Pipeline and their investors be compared to the losses to local property owners. We have a substantial amount of property, and we think that its value will disappear. It's important to us also that when you make your studies, you base it not on the assertions and projections of Constitution Pipeline, but on real data coming from real projects that have been carried out in other areas, including Pennsylvania, and tell us what really happens over the course of time, not just rosy projections and short-term thinking like that of the first speaker this evening, who can't be foolish enough to just say everything's just going to be hunky-dory if we just leave the Constitution Pipeline alone. Unwarranted. Our family has...
Out of time here, Mr.
All right, one sentence. Our family has submitted at least 50 pages of comments and requests for information, and I hope you take all of it very seriously and report back your real data-driven findings for all of our consideration. Thank you.
And Stack.
Hi, thank you. This is the second time I've spoken before you. I live in Delaware County in Davenport, where I'm a landowner. We moved here to build our retirement home on property we've owned for 8 years, and now we can't. We're just here kind of Well, basically, I feel that the unconstitutional pipeline people knocked the wind out of my sails. When I got the letter, we got the letter back in the spring. We were in the process of moving here, and here we are. We can't build. It would be absurd to build when there's a bullseye pipeline going through our land. So I stand here. It's difficult for me to speak. I'm not comfortable, but I think that there's probably many, many, many more people out there, both landowners and those in the community, who will never stand up in front of you. So as difficult as it is for me to be here, I want to be here not only for myself, but all those who won't show up. There's many, many, many of us. I've never felt so violated of my own rights as an American citizen as what these people are doing to me and my compatriots throughout Pennsylvania, New York, and beyond. One specific concern, and I have many, is the fact that they would build this line through areas that are so rocky. Now, some people spoke of it earlier and had a lot of good technical things to say about the depth of the rock and the type. My concern is that when I read their literature, they talked about the trench would be 4 feet deep. However, in rocky areas, the minimum allowed is 2 feet deep. And since our area is so rocky, the thought of a 30-inch pipeline only 2 feet below the soil or the surface of the land, it's horrific. It's just a horrific concept. I mean, kids could dig that up, for, get to that level in no time. So that's one thing that I would like you to look at, ferc to look at, is how much of the land is actually rock, and how deep would this pipeline, this nightmare, be buried in our soil, in our Mother Earth, for unnecessary reasons. I mean, look at the map of this area of New York. Yes, it may be, the difficulties that those who are pro-pipeline speak about, money, 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 but it's pristine, it's beautiful. It should be the return of agriculture here. And that's what this area needs to see. Good, organic use of the soils, not this destruction for short-term greed. And that's really what it is. So, along with looking at the depth of the trench in a rocky area, I really, as others have said, but please consider if they continue fracking in Pennsylvania and they really want to ship it east or far east, wherever they're going to ship it, let them do it on lines that already exist and not come through this virgin territory. Thank you.
Giuseppe Fedun.
Good evening. This is my second time speaking to the panel. I'm a landowner over here in Oneonta. I own 135 acres, and the pipeline goes right through my property. Basically, will be dividing my property in half. I got over 2,000 feet of pipeline going through it, and my main residence right now is on Long Island. Me and my wife and my children, we are living the dream that hopefully one day we will be able to move up here. We bought the property about 10 years ago. We built a house on it and slowly trying to finish it with our savings that every year we try to put aside and sacrifice ourselves to be able to put aside to invest up here. So as far as the comments made by the mayor of Oneonta, people from Long Island bring money to Oneonta, not the pipeline. We come up every weekend, we work on our house, we put money into the economy of this town, and we were building a dream, be able to go back and hopefully spend the rest of our time in our life living closer to nature. Unfortunately, that dream has been put on hold for us too. My kids are always asking questions, what's going on, what are we doing, when are we moving? And it's very hard for me to explain to them that everything we worked for and everything we put aside for very near future might not have any value. I would like to see how you people of the panel feel if everything you're working for and all the money that you try to put away for your future one day will just disappear because another company just decides that you're not worth it. And that is something that we really should consider. Put yourself in our shoes. Put yourself where we are. Put yourself in the sacrifice that we're making to keep these properties going, paying the taxes, doing what proper citizens do, and then ask your question if that is really, if this is constitutional or if this is right for the people of New York to suffer. Thank you.
Mary Finneran, Robert Need, Eleanor Moriarty, Mary Finneran, Robert Need,
Thank you. My name is Robert Need. I'm a member of the Board of Directors for the Center for Sustainable Rural Communities. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. We have been contacted by residents in Delaware, Otsego, and Schoharie County, and without exception, they all oppose this pipeline. On behalf of those people, I offer the following comments. One or more of the proposed pipeline routes runs through what the U.S. Geological Survey has identified as an active seismic area, an area that in fact is the confluence of seismic faults. In fact, the confluence of those seismic faults has been pinpointed to be at the border of Otsego and Schoharie County on Schoharie County Route 22. It has been the epicenter of multiple earthquakes in the last 4 decades, the last of which cracked my foundation. Suggesting we place a pipeline through the confluence of active seismic faults is asking for a tragedy. One or more of these proposed pipeline routes runs through sensitive geological areas that include fragile karst limestone formations, through which hundreds of private drinking wells are drilled. Construction that may include blasting represents a significant threat. One or more of the proposed routes runs through multiple flora and fauna habitats, including documented nesting sites in the town of Summit, New York for the bald eagle, and endangered bat colonies in one of the nation's largest cave systems in Schoharie County. All of the proposed routes intersect or run in close proximity to school bus routes for multiple school systems in multiple counties, including the bus route on which my son rides and on which the sons and daughters of my neighbors ride every day. These routes also run near other sensitive areas, including municipal reservoirs, water treatment plants, medical facilities, emergency services facilities, public utilities, including telephone, fiber optic cables, electric distribution lines, water and sewer, cell towers, and the interstate railroad signal control lines. On behalf of the residents of Delaware, Otsego, and Schoharie County, I ask FERC to make a rational decision and deny approval for this pipeline. Thank you.
Eleanor Moriarty.
My name is Eleanor Moriarty, and I'm here on behalf of the Delaware Otsego Audubon Society. We have submitted scoping comments to you before, but tonight we'd like to focus on, once again, Our organization and its members have serious concerns about the practice of hydrofracking and the proposed Constitution pipeline. There is strong evidence against any public need or benefit from this pipeline. FERC should insist on the proof that this project is necessary, lacks alternatives, and will provide benefits to the public before giving a privately owned for-profit corporation the authority to take citizens' private property against their will. The company's simple assertion that the envisioned capacity of the pipeline is spoken for does not meet this threshold, and we believe that no fair and unbiased analysis can provide such proof. As for the issue that should be addressed in the environmental review of the project, we have a major concern about the pipeline's impact on bird habitat. Many of the forest-dwelling birds in our region are in significant decline due in large part to fragmentation of woodlands. Species such as the wood thrush, scarlet tanager, black-throated blue warbler, and numerous others require large tracts of contiguous forest for successful breeding. As these areas are broken into smaller pieces by development, agriculture, and other activities, predators and nest parasites can negatively impact nest lowering breeding success. It is well documented that corridors as small as logging roads can threaten these at-risk species. Certainly, a pipeline right-of-way will significantly damage these forested lands with resulting loss of habitat. The path of the preferred route along the higher elevations of our region will take it through some of the largest and most unbroken woodlands for birds. Continued maintenance of the right-of-way to keep it clear will mean a perpetual corridor threat to forest birds. It has been suggested that the right-of-way could benefit bird species that use brush habitat and edge habitat. However, there is an abundance of these areas in the region and beyond, and as a result, these birds have relatively healthy populations in contrast to the steady declining forest species. In addition to our concerns over loss of important bird habitat, we have submitted written comments on the pipeline's threats to wetlands, streams, vernal pools, vegetation, and other wildlife among issues. On balance, we do not believe there is any overriding need for this pipeline, and certainly that the environmental damage is unacceptable to such a questionable project. And you have heard over and over tonight the evidence and the data presented before you that the damage will be so significant to this incredible area.
Peter Hudeberg. Stephen Barton. Bill Feldman.
Peter Hudeberg, Plymouth, New York. As some people, but perhaps many more people should be aware, the Pennsylvania Alliance for Clean Water and Air has compiled over 500 gas industry incidents of air and or water pollution and other types of accidents with many serious health effects and some deaths recorded for people and animals. Certainly there's a danger to living close to gas pipelines. Wikipedia has listed over 200 pipeline spills, leaks, and explosions since the year 2000 in the US. That would be over 16 per year on average. So just listing some of the people who have encountered serious health problems from exposure just to compressor stations, not to fracked wells. Of course, that would take the rest of the evening to list those people. Just people, some of the people who've been exposed to compressors, which we expect will be a consequence of build-out of these pipelines, of this pipeline. Kathy and John Sayers of Morgan County, Ohio, lost their home to a Tennessee gas pipeline explosion. Mary Mack of Clearville, Pennsylvania, lived near a Spectra Energy underground storage field and compressor station, and they have arsenic and volatile organic chemicals in their water. And she has suffered from partial paralysis in her legs due to lesions in her spinal cord. Wayne and Angel Smith of Bedford County, Pennsylvania also live close to the same Spectra Energy facilities. Their air and water are also polluted with arsenic. They've lost a 600-pound steer, 3 calves, 1 cow, 3 dogs, 12 chickens, and 4 cats. You know, some people have some belief, some reason for believing that this is a highly toxic industry. Warren and Rebecca Sheffield and family of Dish, Texas have suffered multiple chemical sensitivities and vertigo. Their children are easily winded and experience vomiting, hives, itchy skin, nosebleeds, seizures, all since the air was polluted by a compressor station. Susan Hare of Morrisania Mesa, Colorado suffers nosebleeds, itching eyes, face, coughing, and leg nerve inflammation that hinders her ability to walk since compressor stations and gas wells were built in her area. Pam Judy of Carmichaels, Pennsylvania suffers headaches, fatigue, dizziness, nausea, nosebleeds, and her blood tests show exposure to benzene and other chemicals since the compressor station was built 780 feet from her house. Public health and safety and the health and safety of wildlife, farm animals, and nature should be of prime concerns in determining what constitutes public interest in your determination to build a pipeline. Thank you.
Stephen Martin.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Barton, B-A-R-T-O-N. I am a third-generation farmer, a steward of the land, and I am a strong supporter of national energy independence. I believe that our natural gas resources will lead us down this road. As with every energy system, there's the need for a delivery system. I believe this continental pipeline will enable more citizens of this country to benefit from the use of natural gas so that it does not go overseas. Mayor of New York, Bloomberg, has a program to increase to 80% the number of buildings that will be heated with natural gas. Currently, they are at 10%, and people there already see improvement of the air quality and of their way of life. I want to see us have that. The constitutional pipeline will allow local communities to benefit from natural gas. The route I urge the Regulatory Commission to approve this pipeline. I also urge the Commission to approve the alternate route out. This will put the pipeline within reach of the depot in Skaneateles, which will allow New York State to expand its stations of compressed natural gas so that their vehicles will burn cleaner and more efficiently. There is even room where they have closed down the rest area where either New York State could build a commercial operation or some other company could buy and create a commercial compressed natural gas. Our local towns and school districts could go in on that, and they could benefit through both the use of a cheaper, cleaner fuel to run their buildings and their buses and their trucks. And furthermore, these lines will bring local jobs, both in the short term, during the construction phase, and in the long term. I do urge the Commission to examine the environmental impacts of the TEPCO line. That has been in this area for 50 years. I want you to look at the forest fragmentation that has caused. I want you to look at pictures from 40, 50 years ago and see the amount of forestation then as compared to now. And when you talk about bird habitat, I want you to look at the increased amount of forestation. I also want to have you look at any environmental damage that has resulted from any right-of-ways from that. I believe that this is in the best interest of us locally and us as a nation. Thank you.
Bill Feldman.